All right, all right, all right. I think we're live. Let's see. Let me do a quick little check over here. Yeah. We are live. All right, all right, all right. Welcome everyone to episode 892 of the Black Brain Trust, Black Cultural Intelligence, the Black Intelligentsia, and the Black Business Class Act 4. Now, um, shortly I will be joined by my co-host Rael in just a few. Um, I do want to kind of get this stuff going, but first and foremost, before I do that, because I always have a habit of doing this, first of all, let's welcome everyone. All right, pleasantries in order. And if you guys can so kindly press, we'll do 100 if the music and sound is cool. All right, so if I can get a confirm on that, everything is squared up, we're all good. We ain't been doing live streams like that. So, sometimes maybe settings get fuzzy or something. So I want to make sure everything is all good before we get into the meat of the topic, because there is actually something we are going to address. Perfect. Thank you so much for the confirm. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Wait, let me hit Rael. Give me a second, y'all. My bus. I totally forgot to do that. My bad, dude. Let's see here. All right, let me just. My bad, dude. I thought I sent that to you. All right, let me text it to him real quick. My bad, bro. All right, I just got to. All right, cool. So he'll be up here in just a sec. All right. I'll wait for him to get up here, but in the meantime, what we'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of um, preface the whole thing. Right, we're going to address with regards to statements by Judge Joe Brown. Judge Joe Brown. He recently said some things that I mean, if you were to run it by me, I don't know how many times. Each time it's going to check out as being absurd at best. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of play the clip. I'm going to wait for Ryle to come up. We're going to play the clip, and then I want to do a little bit of comparison and contrasting, and we'll get into that. So I'm just waiting for Rael to come up here, but it's I was almost gonna mention a uh, three letter named content creator, right? Who kind of did the same thing you guys are gonna hear Judge Joe, who does the same thing that you're gonna hear Judge Joe Brown do, and yeah, yeah, we're gonna run this through the BS meter, and then you guys let us know how it all checks out. So just well, here, let me do. Well, let me wait for him. Let me wait for him. So in the meantime, hopefully your Sunday's going well. We were originally going to do this yesterday, but I actually was building scooters. So if you guys care to look at any of that stuff, just type in the real CMPLX. That's my type that in and you get my channel. And then I've been doing uploads on all things scooter in terms of my daily doings, you know. So if you guys care to, wait, let me see. Did he get it? All right. I'm just waiting for him to come up. So, there he is, right there. Yo. Let Ryle do a sound check real quick.
Can
Yo,
you hear me?
there you go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, can I turn it down a little bit?
Huh?
Yeah, turn it down a little bit.
All right, hold up. Better.
Hold on a second.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Cool. All right, man. So you ready? You ready to get into this?
Oh yeah.
All right. So let's do this here. Screen share. And I think yes, right here. Okay. See. So first, let me do this. Proof. Yeah. Let me give you the receipts. This is the link. And it is right around the, let's say, the 18-minute mark.
Fair use.
Fair use and all that good stuff. There you go. All right. Yeah. Fair use and all that good stuff. All right, man. So we get to about the 18-minute mark. And so this is what Judge Joe Brown has to essentially say. Let me know if you guys hear it.
Is negative on Facebook.
Do you hear that?
So when
you guys hear that?
Yep.
You hear it? Okay.
Take down the music in the background so people can hear.
Oh, okay. Wait. You know what? You're right. Hold on. Let me do this real quick. Sorry, guys. It's been a while. Okay, so crap. There it is. All right, here we go.
We talked to the dean was expressing her exasperation with the immature conduct of the students, and that just matched up with what you were saying. This is grade 13. Grown folk don't act like that.
I wanted to share this video.
No, that's not going to be bad mouthing everybody.
No.
It's just that there is an obligation to get your stuff together so you can do what you need to do to become part of W.E.B. Du Bois' talented 10th. In other words, he said the colored people will be able to improve when they bootstrap themselves up, when they're talented 10th, the 10th percentile at the top, uses their intelligence, their drive, their initiative, and their enterprise to get their people together. Now, Du Bois is on the out, and we look at this handkerchief head boy, Booker T. Washington, as a hero now. And frankly, I think of Booker T. Washington, from what I heard from my parents and grandparents and everybody around and about way back when, he was kind of like Al Sharpton back then, like Al is today.
Did you guys catch that? Are you guys there?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, did you guys catch that? Everybody heard that, right? I mean, somebody give me a confirmation. Okay, there we go. Yeah, you heard that. Did he call him a handkerchief? What was it? A handkerchief? What was that? Did you catch that, Ryle?
It's a intraracial pejorative term that's used. It was a term that was used to denote house. It was a term used for house slaves who kissed up to whites for added privileges. So that's where the term comes from. So this is now, mind you, you can't miss the irony of this, because this is somebody who actually was in slavery, Booker T. Washington, who is years later being called a handkerchief head as if the things that he did were all about self-aggrandizement, which it was clearly not the case based on his works. So um, he misuses the term for somebody like Booker T. Um, I mean, you can't build a school, for black men and women, but formulate a business consortium that had black male and female participation within it,
Hmm.
and say this particular person was a handkerchief head who was doing it for their own privilege. Like
Mm.
that's not even the case. I mean,
Mm.
Booker T. Washington didn't even want to take vacations. He had to be forced to take a vacation. When he finally took one when he traveled to Europe, he had to be practically begged and cajoled into taking it because he didn't want to.
Mm.
So somebody, years later, who was really operating on passed down information,
Hmm.
somebody with a law degree.
Well, he so much as said it. I don't know if you guys caught that too. He
Yeah,
literally said from what he was told.
yeah. So that,
That's
that that's a
that's
problem.
very telling too. Judge Joe Brown, not really showing that we're exactly the best judge of character. I don't know. There's
Yeah,
a little bit of pun in there. Yeah, just a little bit.
yeah. But that's is quite frankly idiotic. But go ahead.
Well, let's take a look at who we're calling the modern day Booker T. Washington, right? And this isn't to you guys. This isn't to disparage Al Sharpton. That's not what this is about. This is not to disparage Al Sharpton. What it's to do is to critique Judge Joe Brown's uh, judge his ability to judge one's character. Again, judge. So yeah, let's just take a look at Al Sharpton here. Alfred Charles Sharpton Jr. is an American civil rights and social justice activist, Baptist minister, radio talk show host, and TV personality who is also the founder of the National Action Network civil rights organization. Now, I'll just stop right there. I didn't hear anything about any sort of like educational institution founding or that's I don't know that's like one of the first things that jumps out to me. They were literally on two different like trajectories. But we'll
Right.
continue. In 2004, he was a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. presidential election. Now, Booker T was largely politically agnostic.
Right.
There's no similarity there. He hosts a weekday talk show, keeping it real. Uh huh. All that,
Especially
whatever.
he especially was from a public persona perspective. From a
Yeah,
public view, yes, absolutely.
yeah. Sharpton is known for making various controversial and incendiary comments over his career. He has been accused of making homophobic, anti Semitic, and racially insensitive remarks, as well as inciting incidents of violence. Does Booker T have that reputation? He doesn't have that reputation, does he? I mean, nobody's never really known him to be like this guy right here, right? To do all of this. Oh, but wait, you guys, there's more. We're going to scroll all the way down to. Wait, what is this? Work as an
Uh-oh.
FBI informant. Let's talk about it.
Uh-oh.
Judge, are you sure about this? Are you absolutely sure? Dana. Dana. It, you that literally just flew right past you. You didn't even bother to just hit the brakes on that and say, wait a minute, what? Dana? Okay. No, we're gonna continue though. Sharpton said in 1988 that he informed the government in order to stem the flow of crack cocaine into black neighborhoods. He denied informing he denied informing on civil rights leaders. He
Mm.
denied it, which means somebody was accusing him of it. But that's neither here nor there. In 2002's HBO Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel aired a 19-year-old FBI videotape of an undercover sting operation showing Sharpton with an undercover FBI agent posing as a Latin American drug lord. Let me just give that one a second. During the discussion, the undercover agent offered Sharpton a 10% commission for arranging drug sales. On the videotape, Sharpton mostly nods and allows the FBI agent to do most of the talking. No drug deal was ever consummated, and no charges were brought against Sharpton as a result of the tape. In April 2014, the Smoking Gun obtained documents indicating that Sharpton became an FBI informant in 1983 following Sharpton's role in a drug sting involving Colombo crime family captain Michael Franzese. Sharpton allegedly recorded incriminating conversations with Genovese and Gambino family. Contributing to the indictments of several underworld figures. Sharpton is referred to in FBI documents as CI7. Holy moly, Judge Joe Brown. Actually, you know what? Judge indictments. I'm sorry, let me get out of there. Summarizing the evidence supporting that Sharpton was an active FBI informant in the 1980s, William Bastone. The Smoking Gun's founder stated if he, Sharpton, didn't think he was an informant, the Genovese squad of the FBI and NYPD officials sure knew him to be an informant. He was paid to be an informant. He carried a briefcase with a recording device in it, and he made surreptitious tape recordings of a Gambino crime family member 10 separate times as an informant. He did it at the direction of the FBI. He was prepped by the FBI, was handed the briefcase by the FBI, and was debriefed after the meetings. That's an informant.
Well, it gets gooder. It gets gooder.
Sharpton is alleged to have secretly recorded conversations with black activists in the 1980s regarding Joanne Chesimard, Assata Shakur, and other underground black militants. Oh boy. Veteran activist Ahmed Obafemi told the New York Daily News that he had long suspected Sharpton of taping him with the bugged briefcase.
Yeah, that's about enough.
Let's take a breather. Let's take a breather. You got it, man. I gotta stop. You got it. Go ahead, because we're gonna get the Booker T next. Go ahead.
Okay, so Judge Joe Brown is an avatar for one of the reasons why we're doing this particular series itself, because we have had too many black people of his particular ilk who, from a public position, they claim to advocate the things that they talk about on behalf of black people. And so, but if that's true, then one of the things that you have to do is that when you are actually in the public realm speaking on behalf of black people, you got to be truthful. You got to be truthful.
Yes.
For this dude to get out here and say that Booker T. Washington wanted black men to come to he wanted to train black men how to sweep and mop floors.
Jesus.
Is completely erroneous. It is character assassination. Because there's no way in hell that a person with a Juris Doctorate degree, a law degree, can say that Booker T. Washington helped founded Tuskegee, helped build Tuskegee up to the point that when he left Tuskegee, when he passed away, Tuskegee had a $4 million endowment. In those times, that was a lot of money.
Yes.
For him to say that is completely preposterous. I mean, Tuskegee Institute clearly was not set up to teach black men how to sweep and mop floors. I
I
mean,
mean, yeah. What they then they have there wasn't that the first HBCU with a veterinary school.
that's what I think that's what Shonda said. So
Yeah.
the point is, I mean, you're talking about the school where the Tuskegee Airmen came from.
Yeah, they were sweeping the plane and the floor, or the floor and the plane. Is that what they were doing?
So, I mean, you have to really, really take a step back, and regardless of, because coming into these kind of conversations, we know most black people don't know the real history. What we know is that black people know the skewed version of what they think the history is.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is unskew it. We're trying to actually tell the full story, so black people can really make an informed choice. You can't make an informed choice if you don't know what both sides are talking about. And for you to get on a public platform, when we have, I mean, you have people at what's the dude's name from Fox News, Brian Kilmeade. He just wrote a book on Booker T and Teddy Roosevelt.
God damn, Brian Kilmeade.
I mean, he has just come out with a book in the last 6 to 8 months, literally about the relationship between Booker T and Teddy Roosevelt. And so you will have these black people with that kind of mentality, and they'll sit there and, because he has some comments to say about him working with Teddy Roosevelt, stuff like that, and it's like MLK worked with damn J. Edgar Hoover.
I mean, dude, it's
Lyndon Baines Johnson. Like, I mean, if you watch the documentary Eyes on the Prize, you will have people who worked in the Johnson administration who said he called them niggers. This was the 60s. And black people like King worked with him. And it's like, so when is it okay? When is Booker T. Washington working with white folks? Oh, it's a sellout move. You know what I'm saying? But if it's somebody like Du Bois or MLK working with racist white folks, then it's the noble manifestation of the proper way to view black people's condition. So that's okay. I say this all the time. If you're not going to work with your enemies, man, you're not prepared to do business, period. It doesn't matter what orientation you fall up under. But the reality of the situation is Booker T. Washington picked the lane that he was most comfortable and most prepared to be in. He picked business. It's not like black people don't need business. It's not like black people don't need money. So he set up things that would he set up things in a way that would push the things that he was most comfortable doing. And so where he was very good at it. So I don't really get this notion of how somebody can build a school that not only black men and women attended, but as we get deeper into this presentation, what we're going to show y'all is that you had students from around the world, from places like India and China and Japan and Africa and the Caribbean, who literally came to Tuskegee as students because Tuskegee had become such a beacon in the world in terms of safe space for other people from other ethnicities to be able to go to, because during that time, it wasn't like black people were the only ones who were being subjected to racism. I mean, you had other people too. I mean, you had other people who experienced those types of things. You had other people who experienced colonization too, from China to India. So it would make sense that a school like Tuskegee could be utilized in the fashion that they utilize it in to help them bring back a certain kind of knowledge back to their people, which is really truly fascinating. And we will get into that later. But for him to sit here and say that Booker T. Washington wasn't good enough for Black people, when Chinese students and Indian students and Japanese students thought that Tuskegee was good enough, really shows the depth of ignorance that a lot of these older people in Black America really have. Because I don't care if your cousin didn't like Booker T. I don't give a crap. I don't care if your family didn't like Booker T. Washington. Maybe he had good reason not to deal with your family. We don't know that. But if you're gonna tell me that you don't like Booker T. Washington because your family don't like him, because of whatever experience they had with him, that is silly. You know what I'm saying? As in terms of a historical analysis of things, that's really silly, and it shows a level of, quite frankly, it shows a level of incompetence and really immaturity to approach this particular topic from this particular angle, because Black people, especially younger Black people, are talking. They're trying to figure out another way to move forward, because a lot of people just don't think that integration and desegregation maybe was the best thing for Black people because of what it cost Black people. So the younger generations are looking back in the past and saying, maybe this guy maybe has something figured out after all. And maybe we dropped the ball, and maybe we shouldn't have went in the direction that we went in. And maybe we might need to go in a different direction now, which we have a right to do if we're looking at things in the proper context. Because the people who tend to tell us that things worked out and things is okay are the ones who really kind of benefit from a lot of the stuff that happened at the top, the so-called talented 10th, where nothing else is getting to the masses of Black people. So,
well, I gotta address that real quick, because I'm gonna just briefly read through this, and then, dude, I'm literally, I gotta go run an errand. I'm gonna step away. So, like, we can get into the presentation part at that point, and then I'll go handle that. I'll be right back. Just gotta run to the grocery store. But let's do this right here though, right? Because let's just kind of cover who it is that he is comparing Al Sharpton to. Booker Taliaferro Washington was an American educator, author, and orator. Between 1890 and 1915, Washington was the primary leader in the African American community and of the contemporary Black elite. You got to remember, see, this talented 10th is the new elite that Judge Joe Brown is referencing. There was the contemporary Black elite of the day. I'm going to need you guys really to understand words. Because see, this is where the Judge Joe Brown stuff, you muddy it when you say that he was a bootlicker and a damn handkerchief person and all this crap, when in all actuality, right? Actually, not only just contemporary Black elite of the time, but the primary goddamn leader. Okay. Like, let's stop it. Let's literally stop with the bullshit. Okay. Washington was freed born into slavery, April 5th, 1856, in Halesford, Virginia. Washington was freed when the U.S. troops reached the area during the Civil War. As a young man, Booker T. Washington worked his way through Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute and attended college at Wayland Seminary. In 1881, he was named as the first leader of the new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, an institute for Black higher education. Now, he was named the leader. He's the one who founded it. He expanded the college, enlisting students in construction of buildings. Working at the college was considered fundamental to students' larger education. He attained national prominence for his Atlanta address of 1895, which attracted the attention of politicians and the public. Washington played a dominant role in Black politics, winning wide support in the Black community of the South and among more liberal whites. Washington wrote an autobiography, Up from Slavery, in 1901, which became a major text. In that year, he dined with Theodore Roosevelt at the White House, which was the first time a Black person publicly met the president on equal terms. Hold on, you guys. Hold on 1 second. Primary leader of the contemporary black elite. He's meeting with the president on equal terms. Who is this brother right here? Judge Joe Brown. Listen, listen, listen. Don't besmirch my ancestor's name ever again. This is a gross this is a gross action on your part. It's disgusting. Don't you ever compare an FBI informant to this man right here? That is absurd. Let me do this, man. You want to go ahead and get the presentation started? You want to get any final thoughts and then get off into it? I gotta go. I gotta run real quick.
Yeah, let me say this, man.
Okay, I'm gonna be on my phone listening in. Just give me like 10, bro. I'll be right back.
All right, bro.
All right.
I got it. I'll just say this, and I'll continue where we left off. We have to do this research, y'all, because, quite frankly, many of us, including myself, have been operating with a lot of faulty information that has really, truly been the foundation to the miseducation that we have received pretty much all our lives, myself included. When I'm bringing this information, a lot of this information I'm just finding. And so this is why I've been synthesizing it into these presentation formats. And because we owe it to ourselves to know the full picture. Because when we really know the full picture of who we are and what we've represented as a group, what we realize is that we have a lot to be proud of. And so when you have people like Judge Joe Brown who just poo-poo on the accomplishments of somebody like Booker T. Washington, who Mike V covered last year, the 123rd anniversary of the National Negro Business League. We can't allow people in our own group who really, as far as I'm concerned, are sellouts, who posture in a way that they get on public platforms and they make it seem like they're for Black people, but that's not really who they're for. And they're really for themselves and other classes of people. And so they really don't have our best interests at heart. And for them to try to take down somebody of this particular magnitude, who Dr. Clark, Dr. John Henry Clark, stated, may peace be upon him, stated he was the best leader we ever had. For somebody of his caliber, who worked with Malcolm, for him to say that about Booker T really shows that this man really should be given much more respect than he's garnered in Black America. Um, I mean, you can't build a school and a business organization that operated chapters all across the United States. I think 37 states the National Negro Business League operated in, which led to much of the economic activity that you saw in Black America, in places like your Black Wall Street and stuff like that. You can't underestimate, man, Booker T. Washington's magnitude in terms of impact on the whole of Black America and the development of Black America, because much of the development that has taken place in Black America, especially at the turn of the early 20th century, really culminated from a lot of his efforts, a lot of his foresight to push Black people in a certain direction, because he understood how America worked. And he knew that if Black people could just move in that vein, that Black people would be in a much better position than they would be if they don't. We have 100+ years of talented 10th theory at play. The question you have to ask yourself is, what has the talented 10th produced for Black people? Tangibly, institutional wise, not rhetoric and feel good stuff. I'm talking about tangible institutions. Because as far as I can see, many of the younger people are looking at the older folks and saying, y'all didn't really deliver anything. And that's why we're here. That's why we're having these conversations. If they really delivered for us, there will be no need to have these conversations, because we would be getting what we thought we should be getting. But we're not as a collective. So that's why these conversations are taking place. And what's happening is the intelligentsia and the talented 10, the spotlight is being put on them, and they really can't answer for the things that they have done that have really undermined Black people's development instead of enhanced Black people's development. So that's the premise of why we wanted to do the Booker T series and this one as well, and other ones in the future. So this is not about beef, even though it might seem like we banging, but it's for a good cause, because we can't allow people to just keep slinging mud on Booker T. Washington and not giving this ancestor the proper credit. Because if his model is good enough for the Chinese, if it's good enough for the Indians, if it's good enough for the Japanese, if it's good enough for the Africans, if it's good enough for Caribbeans, it should be good enough for Black people. So let's get back into where we left off before. We left off before dealing with Carter G. Woodson's notion of business being an important staple of Black development, how many Black people needed to send their sons to Tuskegee so that they could learn from the likes of people like Carter G. Woodson. He really thought that the way that Tuskegee was set up was set up in such a way that was perfect for younger Black men to come into the institution, to be around the likes of people like Carter G. Woodson so they could get that knowledge. So they could grow as they grow, obviously develop themselves into men who could be those types of men who can build community up. That's really what the center is. This is a thing that is really missed upon people like Booker T. Washington. He was community centric. He was a community centric person. And when he went out there, it wasn't for his own self-aggrandizement. It wasn't for, let me see how I can line my pockets. The way that we see a lot of like intellectuals who don't build anything, all they do is talk about how bad the system is, but they don't actually utilize the tools in the system to help build a better Black America, because they're not about building a strong Black America. They're really out for themselves. So let's get back to it. Let's see. Let me go back. So get back to some of what Woodson was saying. He says this is in the miseducation of the Negro. He says the greater indictment. Now this is in his critique of quote unquote higher education as far as PhDs. What he was seeing back then is that a lot of these people in Black America that was being produced in a lot of time predominantly white institutions, they weren't being inculcated with an education that was going to be good for the culture. And like Amos Wilson stated before, if your education cannot help your culture, it's useless. So this is the backdrop. Now, mind you, this is somebody who had a PhD. He was the second Black person to get a PhD from Harvard. So he was not against education. So anybody that thinks that this is an attack on people with PhDs, no, that's not what this is. His position was that the PhD, what they're learning is not really producing something that's effective for Black people. And then when these people come back to Black people, they actually participate in the miseducation of Black people because they orient them to a worldview that is not really helpful for their internal development. So that's the backdrop of this particular book. So he had a PhD. He wasn't against education. He was against the way that people with PhDs were being educated and informed, because he believed that they were coming back to Black America and they were actually ruining the mentality of Black people, because before, Black people's ethos during this time was more capital based. It was more institutional development. It was about how can we amass property, resources, how can we build institutions that protect us, because that's what your institutions are supposed to do. Your institutions are supposed to protect you and your people, so you don't have to go out into the overall society and always have your hand out to other groups of people. You can produce from within what you need to sustain you and your group. So that's the backdrop from which Carter G. Woodson is talking. He states, the greatest indictment of such education as Negroes have received, however, is that they have thereby learned little as to making a living, the first essential in civilization. Rural Negroes have always known something about agriculture, and in a country where land is abundant, they have been able to make some sort of living on the soil, even though they have not always employed scientific methods of farming. In industry where the competition is keener, however, what the Negro has learned in school has had little bearing on the situation, as pointed out above. In business, the role of education as a factor in the uplift of the Negro has been still less significant. The Negroes of today are unable to employ one another, and the whites are inclined to call on Negroes only when workers of their own race have been taken care of. For the solution of this problem, the miseducated Negro has offered no remedy whatever. What Negroes are now being taught does not bring their minds into harmony with life as they must face it. When a Negro student works his way through college by polishing shoes, he does not think of making a special study of the science underlying the production and distribution of leather and its products that he may someday figure in this sphere. The Negro boy sent to college by a mechanic seldom dreams of learning mechanical engineering to build upon the foundation his father has laid, that in years to come he may figure as a contractor or a consulting engineer. The Negro girl who goes to college hardly wants to return to her mother if she is a washerwoman, but this girl should come back with sufficient knowledge of physics and chemistry and business administration to use her mother's work as a nucleus for a modern steam laundry. A white professor of a university recently resigned his position to become rich by running a laundry for Negroes in a southern city. A Negro college instructor would have considered such a suggestion an insult. The so-called education of Negro college graduates leads them to throw away opportunities which they have and to go in quest of those which they do not find. In the case of the white youth in this country, they can choose their courses more at random and still succeed because of numerous opportunities offered by their people. But even they show so much more wisdom than do Negroes. For example, a year or two after the author left Harvard, he found out West, a schoolmate who was studying wool. Quote unquote, how did you happen to go into this sort of thing? The author inquired. His people, the former replied, had had such experience in wool, and in college he prepared for this work. On the contrary, the author studied Aristotle, Plato, Marsiglio of Padua, and Paschasius Rathbardus when he was in college. His friend who studied wool, however, is now independently rich and has sufficient leisure to enjoy the cultural side of life, which his knowledge of the science underlying his business developed. But the author has to make his living by begging for a struggling cause. Now, this is the story of a lot of Black people. I remember being an undergrad when the economy was crashing. Um, there wasn't an answer for many of us. Um, Everything that we had constructed around our lives, centered around education. It centered around getting a college degree. The problem was that many of us didn't recognize that the college degree had been one of the most exaggerated things in our lives that really didn't translate into the market the way that we thought it would translate. And so when the economy crashed the way that it did, many of us were unprepared. Many of us didn't have a plan B. And so what Carter G. Woodson is getting at here is that even when white folks make a similar choice, when the economy crashes, for example, they have other means into which to rely upon until things right themselves. And so they're in a better position to make some random choice in college in terms of a degree. Most of the time, people don't even really fully research their degree that they take up. They don't really have any goal, especially in our group. Really, it is, I'm going to get a degree and then I'm going to get a job. And what Carter G. Woodson is saying here, even back then, because this book came out in 1933, what he's saying back then, that's a faulty plan. That is a faulty premise. And so what he's saying is that, we're being miseducated in how we actually look at the world, and how we don't know how to even generationally to put what mom or dad is doing and take it to another level in the next generation, make it something even higher. Like, this is something that we used to know how to do. This is something that we used to practice. This is why Carter G. Woodson supported the stuff that Booker T. Washington was doing, because it made sense. And so it was very practical. And so what we end up having is people who spend more time trying to resolve society's problems. They don't focus on the internal problems within their own group to resolve. We can't resolve America's problems as a group. That would take the whole of the American population to try to do that. One thing that we can put our hands on is us, our families, our friends, like people who are like mind, who want to get things done, who want to build institutions. That we can control that. And so this is what the frame of mind Carter G. Woodson had, even as somebody with a PhD from Harvard. Even as somebody with a PhD from Harvard, Carter G. Woodson wanted us to know who were those great people that were doing things for us, who were inventing things and things of that nature. So we have to keep that in mind when we're having these conversations, is that it's ironic that many of the Black people that built institutions, from hospitals to banks, these people didn't have PhDs. People who were building businesses back then, they didn't have all of that. 100 years later, we have some of the most educated Black people out here, and they can't build a sandcastle. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. When you can't build for your own, but you're out here in the society, like your Dysons and your Henry Louis Gates, constantly talking about how corrupt America is. You can't solve America. What you can do is resolve your own inner problems, which is what people like Booker T. Washington, people like Dr. Bill Cosby, through his educational format, trying to do. Because that's all we can do. And so we have to keep that in mind when it comes to this talented 10th mentality. When you believe in the talented 10th theory, what you're saying is you only believe only 10% of Black people are capable of being productive and being leaders. Me personally, I have a problem with that, because if I took on that frame of reference for myself, that would mean I would say my great grandfather was not capable of being a leader. He was one of the best leaders I ever been around. And he only had a 6th grade education. But he did things practical for our family that made it possible for me to even be here. So I take offense to the talented 10th theory, because even when Black people were in slavery, Black people were building businesses together and passing down generational wealth too. Something that we, by 2053, will not be in a position to do as a collective, because we're not planning generationally. Moving forward, Woodson's assault on the education African Americans receive continues. He correctly identifies that their education hinders them from making a living, but not in the sense they can't make any money. Woodson's point is that the way in which Blacks are educated does not benefit themselves long-term, nor other African Americans. Many regard rural living as a setting where people are backwards and innovation can't take place. But as Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver displayed with the Negro Farmers Conference, the innovative farming techniques of Carver led to the increase of Black farm ownership, and by 1900, there were over 757,000 Black-owned farms. Woodson draws a parallel between the education that does not prepare African Americans, specifically Black men, as well as this education that does not prepare Black men for business. Two aspects of education Black men received at institutions like Tuskegee, where they not only learn trades, but also how to turn those trades into entrepreneurial endeavors that would help elevate Black America through the creation of institutions that will best serve the needs of African Americans. Woodson's assessment regarding whites giving Blacks leftover jobs is a scathing assault on the masculine disposition lacking in Black intellectuals, necessary to build a true Black community. In Woodson's view, Black intellectuals offer no solution to designing an education that incorporates skill sets vital for community building, and in many ways find themselves blocking these efforts of the very Black men who can deliver this type of education. We will this type of interaction. It truly is exemplified uh, as Garvey becomes more powerful, because Garvey really began to challenge the masculinity of the Black intelligentsia. He literally used to challenge if they were real men, because what he saw in them was not the disposition of manly attributes that he saw in them. And so um, you will ultimately see what happened with him as well, especially when it comes to the Garvey Must Go campaign and things like that. In Woodson's view, uh, I read that. In his examples of the young man who shines shoes, the young man sent to college by his father, who works as a mechanic, and the young lady whose mother is a washerwoman, do not attend school with the idea to build upon labor their parents engaged in, and to try to turn that knowledge into an enterprise, a business enterprise. The lack of generational ingenuity, unfortunately, then as well as now, was sorely lacking, which only exists in a cultural framework wherein the educational apparatus reinforces this mindset. Um, we will visit this concept with Amos Wilson's reference later. Woodson hammers his assessment further with the story of the white professor who quit his job to work in a laundry owned by Blacks with the aims of becoming rich. When juxtaposed with a Negro instructor, he notes how this would be frowned upon and viewed as an affront to the intellectual disposition of said instructor, which shows how backwards Blacks were back then as well as now. The idea a white man during Jim Crow could quit his job as a professor, believing he would become rich running a laundromat for a Black-owned company, demonstrates the flawed view of many Blacks towards capitalism and how it can be used to elevate their circumstances from an institutional development perspective. Woodson compares himself to a classmate who studied the liberal arts aspects of higher education, who was able to get into the wool industry because his family was in the business and ultimately became wealthy, while Woodson himself, according to his words, was begging for a struggling cause. What Woodson notes is when whites make the wrong move pursuing their education, many of them can recalibrate and still get their footing. Whereas when Blacks make that wrong choice in education, they're typically left stuck with nowhere to run to. You want to get in here?
Man, I'm just getting back on, man. Let me just kind of, well, just briefly, man, if you could just kind of give me just a little summary of what I'm hearing it, but contextually speaking.
Okay, so I'm basically talking about this part about the miseducation of the Negro, where Woodson talks about the importance of Blacks engaging in business, and how sending them to Tuskegee, where they could learn from people like Carter G. Woodson and Booker T. Washington, from the aspects of the trade aspect from Carter G. and the business acumen of Booker T, which is what Black men got at Tuskegee. They didn't just get trade info, they got business info as well. Which makes, because you see the institutions that Booker T was a part of. Tuskegee, education, National Negro Business League, business. So
but he went to Hampton.
Right.
And there, that was an A&M.
Right.
Based on what we read in the wiki. Yeah.
So he basically used Tuskegee to funnel men to the business consortium, which was brilliant. When you really think about it, when you don't let them go out there and try to figure it out on their own. You literally, because when we did the Booker T. Washington series, we talked about how there were young men who had finished Tuskegee who didn't have the money to get into real estate the way they wanted to. So basically, what he did was he basically fronted them the money to start it out with, kind
He
of
did
like what.
basically what he did was he created the incubator before there was
Yes,
an incubator.
exactly, exactly.
Oh,
Um,
hey, real quick, Ryle, can do you know that link I sent you for the playlist for this?
yeah,
Can you post that in the back? Ali, he's saying he got to start from whatchamacallit. Bro, we went ahead and put a playlist together so you can just run it. You can start from one and then just play it all the way through.
okay.
Right. So yeah, if you can shoot that to me, Ryle, and then I'll post it in there. Actually, if you know, don't worry about it, man. I don't want to disrupt what you got going on. Man, go ahead. Let me just go ahead and dig it up. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll get it.
So, like I was saying, he basically did something that was akin to what Robert F. Smith did for the brothers at Morehouse when he paid off their debt. So, because Booker T. Washington was very much against Black people being caught up in debt, which is obvious. It makes sense because of the sharecropping experience with whites, which was like a second form of slavery. This kind of mentality is what allowed Black people to get by 1900 like 757,000 farms, because they were able to learn how to work together to avoid the debt peonage that was taking place amongst Black people, that was basically keeping Black people in a semi-state of bondage through sharecropping.
Right.
So, so let me see. To continue, Woodson continues with his assessment. An observer recently saw at the market near his office a striking example of this inefficiency of our system. He often goes over there at noon to buy a bit of fruit and to talk with a young woman who successfully conducts a fruit stand there in cooperation with her mother. Some years ago, he tried to teach her in high school, but her memory was poor and she could not understand what he was trying to do. She stayed a few weeks smiling at the others who toiled and finally left to assist her mother in business. She learned from her mother, however, how to make a living and be happy. In this story, Woodson demonstrates something very powerful in this passage that readers must not miss. What Woodson conveys to his audience is the idea of when one works not for self, but a common cause, like family with the mother and daughter. This helps build culture. The job does not matter. It doesn't have to be prestigious to bring happiness. Helping her mother make the business successful allowed a bond to be strengthened between mother and daughter. This story reminds me of a young Mexican lady who was making me a sandwich at Panera Bread years ago. As we began talking, we broached the subject of family, in which she told me her mother was living in Mexico. She communicates to me that she paid for her mom to have a house built in Mexico and was having one built for herself.
Hey, it dropped out just for a brief second.
It wasn't that.
It dropped for
No,
a
I
brief
said,
second.
okay. I said she had a smile on her face and was happy to be able to help her mother be comfortable. It wasn't her job that brought her happiness. It was knowing that her job allowed her to help her family members to live comfortable and with dignity instead of having her mom out in the streets doing God knows what to survive. When this behavior becomes a norm amongst a group of people, it becomes culture. When this behavior is not commonplace, it also becomes culture of the wrong type. Woodson continues. This observer was reminded of this young woman soon thereafter when there came to visit him a friend who succeeded in mastering everything taught in high school at that time and later distinguished himself in college. This highly educated man brought with him a complaint against life. Having had extreme difficulty in finding an opportunity to do what he is trained to do, he has thought several times of committing suicide. A friend encouraged this despondent man to go ahead and do it. The sooner, the better. The food and air which he is now consuming may then go to keep alive someone who is in touch with life and able to grapple with his problems. This man has been educated a ways from the fruit stand. There are untold stories of people who end up where the man in the story finds himself. Those who only see problems in life, who see no way to address these problems and just want to end it all. Ironically, their friend did not indulge this folly. Instead, they encouraged them, I believe facetiously, to get them to stop their belly aching. This man lacked a creative spark, that divine side of human creation that compels one to create. His education did not compel him to be creative. It compelled him to not see opportunities because solutions did not fit his ethos, like so many others. Woodson goes further. This friend had been trying to convince this misfit of the unusual opportunities for the Negroes in business, but he reprimanded his advisor for urging him to take up such a task when most Negroes thus engaged have been failures. If we invest our money in some enterprise of our own, said he, those in charge will misuse or misappropriate it. I have learned from my study of economics that we had just as well keep on throwing it away. Upon investigation, however, it was discovered that this complainant and most others like him have never invested anything in any of the Negro enterprises, although they have tried to make a living by exploiting them. But they feel a bit guilty on this account, and when they have some apparent ground for fault finding, they try to satisfy their conscience, which all but condemns them for their suicidal course of getting all they can out of the race, giving nothing back to it. Now, this is a very important part of this book because many of us know this experience with Black people specifically. When you tell most Black people you have a new job, they celebrate. They say congratulations. Many times when you tell Black people you're starting a business, they're very negative. They tell you about all the statistics that they heard somebody else say about, oh, most businesses that start fail in the first 3 years and all of these different negative things about starting a business. The irony being that most of the time they're working for somebody else's business. Okay.
Right.
And so, but these are the same types of Black people who will tell you, you know, the system is this and that. And they'll be some of the main people that many times be the ones to get you on some hook or crook type stuff.
You mean kind of like that that Sharpton dude?
Yes.
Kind of like him.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is very important because when you go into business, it's the ultimate investment in yourself. It's the ultimate belief in yourself. You can't cheat your way into it. There are people who are born into wealthy families who get passed down a lot of money and they lose it all in the second generation.
Mm-hmm.
Over 60% of wealth that's passed down from the first generation to the second is lost. When you get to the third generation, it's over 70%. So what that shows you is that you can't pass down a business acumen. You have to get into it to develop it.
And
You have to get into
yeah, you have to be, this is the reason why you have those families that have, they're a business, right, where it's been there for generations.
right.
Everybody learns the business soup to nuts.
Yes.
All the dirt. You're gonna do everything from understanding the accounts payable and receivables to sweeping the damn floor.
Yes.
Shout out to Judge Joe Brown. You're that. Sorry.
Yeah, you had to. It was perfect. Yeah.
But soup to nuts, literally, dude. As a key holder, okay, that was what it was for me at Pacific Rise. Why I ended up going there. Danny was like, okay, so if I give you the keys and I gotta take off, or if I just decide not to come in, you can open the shop and run it the whole day. Yeah, I have the ability to do it. Okay, well, let me show you how to do it. And literally the most mundane shit, all the way up onto the very, very, very specific things like, filling out like the DMV registration documentation for a purchase or something, right?
Right.
You got to know the whole shit. Inventory systems, repairs, the whole nine. If you're gonna successfully take on a business, you need to know every damn thing about it. This is why, as much as my daughter is just like, scooters get on my damn nerves, Dad. Sometimes, you know what? She knows how to fix one.
Well, I mean, when you do this research, you find out things about Black people that living in present times you never thought Black people did or demonstrated that they were capable of doing. And so this last story is potent because in your journey in life, part of your journey is dealing with naysayers. Like they're like the speed bumps in the road when you're driving. Like they exist specifically to challenge you to see if you really want what you say you want.
Right.
Like Lonzo has a great thing that he says when he says, when people challenge you, they don't challenge you to challenge you, but they challenge you to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great interpretation of it. That's perfect.
Yeah, there's two kind of inferences, right? In terms of a challenge.
So you have to really, really understand that, unfortunately, you have people who are so-called talented 10 and the intelligentsia who are literally designed to make you believe or make you not believe in what you're capable of.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really trying to not actually I don't want to derail it. I don't want to derail what you got to say. I don't want to go there, but damn, I got something to say about that.
So just keep that in mind, people. Like, it's amazing how you can have these conversations even with Black men, and you can show even Black men how great we can be, and even Black men will push back against it. And these will be the same kind of Black men that say, well, they always trying to say, well, Black men can't do it, and they always trying to keep Black men back, and they always trying to hold us back. They keep holding us back. And then when you come in and say, well, yeah, we can't do this because we already did it. We did it back here. We did it when we did this. Blah, 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 this. Yeah, we can be elite. And then Black men say, man, what are you talking about? Nah, man, they ain't gonna let us do this. I mean, let's go back to what he said. This goes to show y'all how old this stuff is. He said, this friend had been trying to convince this misfit of the unusual opportunities for the Negroes in business. But he reprimanded his advisor for urging him to take up such a task when most Negroes thus engaged have been failures. So he had a mentor, basically. So a person that was kind of mentoring him and saying, because what the person was really saying to him is that they see you as the potential kind of person that could be good in business, even when you don't see it yourself. I had an ex who saw me with the potential of being good in business when I didn't, before I even saw it myself. Okay, this is a black woman. When I didn't see it, she was like, this is no lie. This is what she said, and this was during the time of the economy crashing and all of that. She said, "I know things is frustrating. I know it's a struggle." She said, "But to be honest with you," she said, "you don't need to be working for anybody." She said, "You need to be running your own damn company." She said, "You're the most intelligent man I've ever known." She saw it in me before I did. And that's what this person is speaking to. The person that was advising them saw them with the capability of doing it. But because this person was in their mind, well, most of the black people that was engaged in business have been failures, that's not true. The thing that limited black people during this time in terms of business was Jim Crow and their lack of mobility to be able to try to get into different demographics and markets.
Right.
So they could expand their base. It wasn't because black people were incapable. Black people had a social impediment called Jim Crow that prevented them from being able to sell products at a large rate to whites and other groups.
It is literally institutional.
Yes. We were the only group in America that had that kind of hold on us. And we still built 134 black
Wait,
owned banks.
what?
Hold on. We still had 134 black owned banks, 1886 to 1934. In 1918, we had about 117 black owned hospitals in the United States, even with Jim Crow.
Well, that's what I was going to get at. And then, in addition to that, when you look at what the purpose of a business league would be, that's to circumvent that.
Yes.
That would be the whole reason why you do a business. That would be the reason why you set up a consortium or something like that.
Yes. So you can pull your resources together. Yes.
Right. Well, not only that, but what it also does is you actually, okay, so when you do things that way, you're also setting up what? Your channels and chains of distribution.
Yes.
Your retail aspect, right? So then there's also access to the availability to the customer, right? All of that is really all broken down in something like a consortium because it's various party and various interests that are involved with literally creating something like that, right? That's what people do to get around shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the reason why Amazon literally done bullied their way into the logistics industry to the point where the U.S. Postal Service, aka the Pony Express, is now a goddamn subcontractor to them.
Exactly.
Huh?
Exactly.
Go ahead, bro.
To follow up on Woodson's point, those of us in business know all too well the pushback we get from urging African Americans to engage in economic enterprise. However, much of what we get is the notion of how easily businesses fail when most don't realize majority of businesses fail due to poor management, not just because business is set up for you to fail. New businesses came online during the pandemic, one of the most difficult times to start a business. The irony of this reflects in the fact that these same people do not take the same approach to a job. You get an entirely different reaction. Tell someone that you have a new job, they typically celebrate. Tell the same person you're starting a business, they will tell you how most new businesses fail.
Right.
What is sad is that Woodson saw this frame of mind during his time, ironically, because when we go back to the 1700s, the late 1890s, and early 20th century, business development was a major part of the ethos of African Americans. From business development, technological innovation through inventions, African Americans were very much a people who engaged in economic enterprise despite the laws that limited their mobility. The tragedy of this young man's mindset was that even at this time, which was 1933, when this book was released, with all that rich history that was still taking place in certain pockets regarding Black business development, this brother was of the mindset that he couldn't do it, nor people like him. Now, mind you, he was closer to that experience than we are, and he still had a debilitating notion in his mind that Black people couldn't do business. This mindset truly comes from the miseducation foisted upon Blacks by Black intellectuals groomed in the Marxist order, which is typically anti-capitalism, especially when it's dealing with Black people. For some reason, people have an idea that Black people shouldn't be capitalistic. While everybody else gets to be, we have to be altruistic and march and protest for everybody to make this whole society be perfect.
Doesn't that follow like that talented 10th thing? Only but so many of you can rise to the top to become this, and then it's like a trickle down.
Yes, I mean,
Something to that effect.
Well, it's really a sinister way of looking at it because what you're really setting Black people up for is perpetual underclass, being a permanent underclass.
Right.
Because
there's only but so many of you that can be successful, right?
Yes, because when we get further in this, we're gonna see people who white communists who had a problem with people like Booker T too. And one of the things that we're going to really look at is what is the issue with people having a problem with Black people having economic prowess and power? Okay. Because many of these people are really in the business of keeping Black people out of business.
Yeah. Well, we heard it from Judge Joe Brown earlier. You gotta let the talented 10th get up here first, right? Let them get everything situated. Then I guess what? The rest of you plebes, you can come along.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yes. And so you keep that in mind, Black people, when we're having these conversations. Keep in mind, pay attention to the people who really speak against Black institutional development. Those are the people that you need to watch out for. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter their ethnicity. When people have a problem with Black people having their own institutions, what they're really saying is they're okay with Black people constantly being put in the world like some poor on the corner to beg for money, to solicit services for money. Because everybody else is doing this. Even when the Africans come over here, they're setting up business. Caribbeans come over here, they're setting up businesses. We are the progenitors of a lot of what y'all think is things that came up by white people. Is really us that created it. It's really us that created a lot of this stuff, especially around the turn of the 20th century. This is one of the greatest stories that has not been told to Black people. How can you live? This is not 700 and 800 years later. We're talking about 100 plus
About
years, 100 some
100.
odd years, 120 years,
Yeah, about 100.
130.
Yeah, 130. Anyway, let's say 130. The period we're talking about is 130 to 150 years ago.
Right,
150 being the jump off all this Civil
right.
War.
Now, mind you, Booker T. Washington, he estimated that his plan could take 100 years. Can you imagine that if black people would have stuck? I'm gonna give you a different scenario. Black people proved during Jim Crow that black people did better working with each other than going out there fighting to change America. When people come to America, they know all the stuff about what's happened to black people in terms of what they see on TV and the shootings. They don't even come over here with the mentality to change black America. I mean, to change America. They come over here with the mindset of changing their circumstance. We are spending too much time trying to make America be a perfect place instead of focusing on making our group more perfect, creating a more perfect union like America.
Now, just real quick, man, because it's funny that you mentioned the whole you'll see this taking effect 100 years into the future per him, right? That's what he said, Booker T. Washington. You'll see what I'm talking about in 100 years. Yeah, I would argue that all of this right here is literally what he's talking about in terms of ideological thought, right? Business acumen, being skilled in a multitude of disciplines. Yeah, I think that this is what I think this is the manifestation of that. I don't think the intention per him. I don't think the intention was to just have a bunch of uh, just entertainers and show people.
There it is. There it is.
Hmm. That's all. That's all. That's all that's ever been done. Nameless. What is it from the movie The Network? The world is a business, Mr. Bill.
And a business is a system.
What did he also say in that clip? He said, "This is all one holistic system of systems." You jump out of one, you just jump into another one. There's system, order, and structure in all facets of this third dimensional realm you call reality.
Yes.
There's literally nothing in this third dimensional realm that you can engage in that literally defies the rules and the laws.
Right.
Anything that you experience in this realm has a rule or a law or an explanation to it.
Yeah. I mean, the vibratory frequency in which many black people move in is chaos. That's what it is. And what happens is in America, because you don't understand the design of it, you bump into people with structure and you find yourself getting your feelings hurt because people see you as not being structured.
Yeah.
And then you're mad. Well, that's because that you don't want the structure.
What does structure look like for an unstructured person?
Because black people have allowed themselves to believe that structure is some white people stuff.
It's boring.
Structure is white.
Chaos is feral.
Like, think about that for one quick second when you say that. Oh, well, black people can't be structured because that's some white people stuff. You know how stupid that sounds?
So you're implying that the opposite state of existence is actually true to you, but then somehow you look over at the people and are envious of the people who live the boring, structured life.
Lewis Latimer created the filament for the light bulb. Was it? If it wasn't for him, there would have been no light bulb at that particular time. That he had to be able to think in a structured fashion to create the filament. I'm sitting here in my office right now with a lamp that has 3 light bulbs attached to it. This is the work of a black man, because those black men of that particular time thought in a structured fashion.
Do
Not
you
chaotic.
do you think he got the idea for the filament while he was sweeping floors?
I sincerely doubt it.
Huh.
So this is something that we really have to contend with, because a lot of the stuff that we look at as black is not black. It's chaotic, and it doesn't bring you the results that you're looking for. You know, you want to keep, when you talk about America, you're like, oh, they need to give black people credit for the things that we've done in America. And we've done a lot of things in America. Well, when black people are going to give the people who actually did the things that you're talking about, when are y'all going to give those people credit? You want white people to give you credit, but you don't want to give black people credit.
You don't want to, right?
That's backwards.
It's that you know, it's kind of like white validation, I guess. And this isn't even. It's really, this is more of a black thing than more so than it is like, say, like something that we're psychoanalyzing white people or something. It's the tendency for black people to do that. They go above and beyond to get. Dude, you hear it in the, not to digress again, but just real quick, you hear it in the Manosphere stuff, right? The divester people, and then the passport bro, and then the whatever. Right? They go out for the approval of others.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As opposed to doing it all internally. You know, it's funny how they'll go above and beyond for that. They go above and beyond for the approval of others. But when it comes to serving the needs of your own and interacting and doing commerce with your own, Jesus fucking Christ, it's like pulling a goddamn wisdom tooth.
Mm-hmm. Let's continue. Woodson exposes these black intellectuals for not only refusing to invest in black enterprise, but also using this class of blacks while not giving anything back to them. And when they have a convenient excuse to complain, they use this opportunity to hide their treachery by their shortcomings, to absolve themselves for not being supportive of this particular class's endeavors. I want the audience to be clear. It's my view that black intellectuals of this type, which I believe most are, have exhibited the worst types of betrayal to the black business class and blacks overall. The former have never gotten their proper respect in the history of black achievement. The latter has not been privy to this class, who could inspire them to greatness if only they knew of their existence. Instead, blacks get fed slavery, lynching, and all the wretched things whites did to blacks, but never the things we did for ourselves. Woodson hits harder when he writes, gossiping and scandal mongering Negroes, of course, come to their assistance. Miseducated by the oppressors of the race. So Woodson is really getting into it here. Okay? So your black intellectual that you see on news shows all the time that don't speak for black people.
Even in some of these spaces.
Okay? So he said, miseducated by the oppressors of the race. So this is a black man with a PhD from Harvard.
Harvard.
Okay? So you can't underestimate the irony in which he's speaking on this, okay? Because he was able to see through the BS, even though he got the actual degree. He said, miseducated by the oppressors of the race. So you talking about white folks. So these blacks are miseducated by the oppressors. Such Negroes expect the Negro businessman to fail anyway. They seize, then, upon unfavorable reports, exaggerate the situation and circulate falsehoods throughout the world to their own undoing. You read such headlines as Greatest Negro Business Fails, Negro Banks Robbed by Its Officers, and The Twilight of Negro Business. The miseducated Negroes then stand by saying, I told you so. Negroes cannot run a business.
Told y'all.
My professors pointed that out to me years ago when I studied economics in college. And I never intend to put any of my money in any Negro enterprise. Now, here's the irony, y'all. Here's the irony of that particular passage. And I think it was Booker T. Washington's Negroes in Business. He in the book, you see him show evidence of white people putting their money in black-owned banks. Do y'all understand what I'm saying?
Put your money where your mouth is.
Can y'all really understand? During Jim Crow, white people was putting money in black-owned banks.
We can't have that. We can't have that now, can we? Wait. We can't have that now, can we?
Meanwhile, he's capturing the essence of somebody with the mentality who was miseducated in white school, who had professors, white professors saying black people can't run a business. Meanwhile, Booker T. Washington in the Negro in Business was talking about when he was in a black-owned bank and white people coming in the bank putting their money in the bank. So you can't miss the irony on this stuff, man. What we're finding out more so than anything, that this Booker T. Washington was an accommodationist and he didn't have black people's interests at heart, was really the talk of a lot of, to be frank, and I have to say it this way, a bunch of jealous ass niggas.
That's what it sounded like to me, because we did the comparison earlier. That's really what it's coming off like at this point.
I mean, this passage is very important to discuss. And let me give a shout out to my dog, Sandog, because he is the one that really got me to really crack open the miseducation of the Negro. I appreciate him because this book really unlocked a lot of what we're dealing with now.
Shout out Sandog.
You know, he really put this book in my ear and he really pushed me to really get this book.
Yeah, shout out Sandog, man.
We see the phenomenon in this space where PhDs, the very people Carnegie Woodson had a problem with, are afforded an aura of invincibility by sycophant males who don't read nor research, but who are constantly bloviating about topics they have no in-depth knowledge of. Instead of being men and taking the time to learn, they hide behind those with titles who are just as ignorant of the world as they are.
Oh, God damn it!
Now,
stop.
let me be very clear when I say this at this point. When I say ignorant of the world, I'm not saying ignorant of the world in the way that we see certain phenomena take place. When I say ignorant of the world, I'm saying ignorant of the world and how do we best approach counteracting certain phenomena in the world that we need to overcome so we can fully develop and self-actualize as men and as a group overall. So this is not taken away from anybody's accomplishments in terms of accomplishing getting a PhD. That's not what this is about. So
No.
for anybody that tries to run away and say, "Oh man, them niggas over there hating on PhDs," it's not like that at all. What we don't want to see is intelligent brothers with PhDs that we can utilize to do things from a business perspective, from a non-profit perspective, be misdirected by goofy nigga shit in spaces where dudes are not taking life serious.
Where the PhD literally just is rendered useless, basically.
Yes, they render it useless through
They
their
render it
ignorance.
useless doing that shit.
Not the person who achieved it. Because Booker T. Washington did not have a problem with W.E.B. Du Bois's PhD. If he did, he would have never used the social science research that Du Bois had done to teach it at Tuskegee. He used much of Du Bois's work. He asked Du Bois twice to join Tuskegee, so he didn't have a problem. He was willing to plug him. He was willing to plug him into the Tuskegee machine. Unfortunately, Du Bois instead wanted to undermine him, formed the NAACP.
He worked for another machine.
In his mind, he believed he was more talented, and he shouldn't have to listen to basically a country bumpkin nigga. That to me was a serious and egregious error on Du Bois's part. Because when Booker T opened his hand, he kept his hands in his pockets. He didn't want to shake his hand.
We proved that. Them live streams were them letters that W.B. Du Bois wrote. This is his own words.
So the reason why we want to bring this to the fore, and y'all got to really hear, stop, let go of the beef stuff, and just really listen. The reason why we're doing this is because we can't afford another fucking 100 years of this same bullshit. We gotta end it, y'all. We gotta end this shit. We have to end it. Like it's on us. Because we have had decade after decade after decade after decade of all this sniping. When we're working together and building institutions, we all got to see at the table anyway. So what are we going to be fighting about if we all got to see it? Ain't nothing to fight about. But we're going to have to look back at people that we look at as heroes and sheroes, and we're going to have to really do a deep analysis on what they were doing. And if it's found out that they was on some jealous, hating shit, then hey, we got to call the shit out.
Then that's what it's going to be.
Just what it's going to be.
And that's what it was.
I don't have an axe to grind against Du Bois. I have no personal feelings in him whatsoever. But at the end of the day, you can't sit here and say that Booker T is a sellout, but he had institutions for black men. But Du Bois sits on the Negro Project, which ultimately becomes Planned Parenthood. And one of the biggest arguments in this space is about Planned Parenthood and abortions and all that type of stuff. But Du Bois gets a free pass of sitting on the project of racist eugenics.
Bruh, this is that's why I was just like, I'm over here looking at Dana funny. I'm like, you didn't pump the brakes on that shit? Like, are you for real?
I'm sorry.
Like, damn, we just gonna completely sidestep all that. The Planned Parenthood. Right. That was your man's. Wait a minute. What?
Hold on. I guarantee you, if I came in this space and said, yeah, I worked for Planned Parenthood for 20 years, man, these Negroes will be living in
everybody like, you got arrows in your back, bro.
Why does he get a free pass? Could it be because instead of actually doing the proper research, people just take sides because of things they just hear, but they don't actually research it?
Judge Joe Brown literally said it.
I mean, that's what Joe Brown did.
What my mammy and my pappy told me, right? That's what you going?
That's a problem.
That's what you going? Like see, this is the issue when we start talking about the critical thinking skills, right? And the position that black folks find themselves in socially, because they literally will make judgments and determinations. I can't even call it rudimentary data. I was gonna say on the most rudimentary data.
I can't even call hearsay that. And judge even knows that that's not even admissible in the court of fucking law. Okay?
No, it's not.
It's not. This is why I'm like, do we really have to do this? Did we really have to do this right here? Where we have to kind of paint it out and just kind of spell it out. Like, I get you think a lot of niggas are dumb because, talented 10th and all that. That's actually not the case, fam. I hate to inform you this.
I know I didn't come in this space with the mentality that only 10% of black men in this space is capable. I know I didn't.
That's not me.
I didn't come in here with that mentality.
I don't believe that.
I came in this space sharing information because I believe all black men are capable of being productive if they understand what being on a code means and shifting to the very things in terms of productivity that they need to shift to.
Yeah.
I believe that wholeheartedly. And the reason why I believe it and I know it is because I've done the research to show we already did it.
Well, not only that, I'm thinking also here, I don't know what everybody's objective or goals and what they're trying to achieve in life. However, if you find yourself in a space that is a repository of information, that enables you to go ahead and get a jump and a leg up on shit. See, so I'm not, as much as motherfuckers want to call me arrogant and all this, bro, I am so not arrogant to think that any and everybody out here does not have the ability to be successful in life if they have the right information and two, the impetus to act on it. That's literally the formula if you were to ask me. See, so what I don't do is just say, well, I don't think you have that ability if you're not of the 10th percentile. The fuck? I don't believe that shit.
As I recall, when Alonzo Hall came into space, Alonzo Hall said, he didn't say me. He said, we need to be in control of industries and we need to get on this hedge fund shit. That's somebody that came into space thinking the highest of black men. You don't bring up hedge funds. That ain't no small topic. That's big boy shit. But because if you know how these hedge funds operate, they're like a consortium of men who pull their resources together to acquire more resources and property. They work together. That's exactly what the National Negro Business League functions.
That was exactly what it was for.
The same thing that Teddy Roosevelt copied and set up the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I read the article. He had a sit down with him, remember? On equal terms. First brother sit down with a president on equal terms. What do you think that meeting was about? What you just said. We just read it earlier. Come on, y'all. Al Sharpton, really. No, we gotta right some wrongs out here, fam. This is bullshit.
Yeah. Continue. In many cases, the only thing they have is a piece of paper, typically from a predominantly white institution, that affords them cover, or they think it does, when exposed for being wrong, in which they resort to be loud and obnoxious when their degree doesn't allow them to get their way. We see this a lot in people like Cornel West. We see this a lot in Dyson. We see this a lot in these types of people when they're called to task. When they're, I'll give a prime example. When you put these types of people in the same space of people who are not as titled in terms of degrees, but just have a very simple way of looking at life. Many of these people take on the approach of, well, you can't say anything to me because I have a PhD and you don't. Well, if that's the case, when you got booked for the debate and you saw this other person get booked for the debate, you should have declined and said, this person is not in the same realm with me, so I'm going to decline this interview.
Mhm.
That's not what you said. But when you get into the debate, that's the approach you take. That's fallacious. Because it didn't take my great grandfather to have a PhD to know that he needed to do something in terms of productivity if he wanted to have a family, be
Exactly.
able to push a family forward. And by the way, he had a sixth grade education. So, me personally, my great grandfather's sixth grade education took our family very far. I don't know if a lot of these PhDs are taking their families far like my great grandfather took our family.
With the whole PhD, given what your grandfather was able to do, right?
Okay? Your degree, like your education, like Amos Wilson said, should be there to help your culture. If it doesn't help your culture, it's useless. Because that's what he is talking about in the developmental psychology of the Black child. Psych education, in a lot of ways, is political too. And if you're educated in the way to tamp down Black creativity, this is why hip hop has been so maligned in Black America, typically by the previous generation, as far as like boomers and older people, is because we never asked permission.
Nope.
We just did it.
Did it. I mean, ask you what you thought about it.
We didn't care when we did hip hop whether white folks was going to accept it or not. We didn't care. It wasn't for them anyway when we first started. But it was for anybody who appreciated it. But nobody was like, okay, when we write this rhyme, is the white person going to like it? When we scratch this record, is white people going to accept this scratching of this record?
Nobody asked that.
Okay?
Nobody asked that. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's an active campaign right now to now kind of like sow like seeds of dissension within the hip hop community, right? Particularly amongst, let's say, like the ADOS, right? And then like say like Puerto Rican and the Caribbean brothers and who else and what have you, right? As if to say, well, they all didn't have a hand in this, which they did. There's no one single person that sparked the jump off of an entire culture. If we call America a melting pot, then at some point there is going to be some sort of literal new birth culture that is going to come about that has an inclusion element to it that ended up becoming hip hop. Okay. Now, the conversation about what the hell it turned into and all this, that's something else entirely. We're not going to derail that, but yeah.
Let's see. Where are we? Okay. These servile imbeciles typically come to their defense, which ironically they shouldn't. Um, they shouldn't need being. Their lofty education should demonstrate to the world their superior intellect when, quite frankly, their education shows themselves to be utter cowards. These types of males don't have the heart like others to go to the market with a product they created and see what it's like to lay it all on the line. Use every strategy possible to make a living by offering a solution, which business does, by serving customers' needs. The needs many PhDs serve are of those who fear themselves first, and those who look like them who are unafraid of going those who are unafraid of going into the market and taking a chance on themselves and their dreams. Um, Many of these PhDs are desperately seeking tenure, which is a job for life in academia, where they can spout all types of rhetoric without fear of losing their jobs, where they can spew self righteous indignation at whatever perceived injustice they can find. The most notable one being blacks who are unafraid to compete. Having a job for life doesn't sound like someone who wants to compete, it sounds like a slave. One of the arguments these people will use to justify things like tenure is that they need to be able to speak truth to those with power. But you know who they end up criticizing the most? Those blacks who refuse to look at the world like they do because they refuse to look at themselves as victims, constantly living with a grievance on their mind. These people tend to get uninformed people riled up, filled with anger and rage, while never taking that energy and using it to do something constructive, like build an institution that best serves the needs of blacks.
Now,
Well,
who's saying this?
this is me.
No, were you reading for something, or are you?
No, this is my response to Woodson's take.
Got you.
What makes this so tragic is that Woodson acknowledges these types learn this mentality from professors,
Mhm.
the same people who exist in this intellectual bubble where their salaries are paid by the very classes of people, hardworking folks, as well as business persons whose taxes go to funding their salaries. They literally are paid to critique how imperfect the world is, as if they have the answers to make the world perfect. Woodson exposes these types further when he writes, yet investigation shows that in proportion to the amount of capital, invested in Negro enterprises manifest about as much strength as businesses of others similarly situated. Negro businessmen have made mistakes, and they are still making them. But the weak link in the chain is that they are not properly supported and do not always grow strong enough to pass through a crisis. The Negro businessman then has not failed so much as he has failed to get support of Negroes who should be mentally developed sufficiently to see the wisdom of supporting such enterprises. Hey, this is 1933, y'all.
This is not recent.
This is 1933. So when you hear black people say, we need more black businesses, oh, this is one of the things I hate. I can't stand this shit. I can't stand to hear black people
Which
say,
one is
hey,
it?
we need more black businesses, as if black people have never demonstrated business acumen in the history of this country or the world, for that matter.
All you guys got to do, go look up the Old World Technology series that I do that's supplemental to this series. Because when we talk about this period of time, we have to mirror it with what was actually what brothers were actually doing back then. So if you go and look at those Old World EV, steampunk and mechanical animals, and so these are all like live streams that are on this channel right here, and you'll see that there were brothers like literally hands like waist deep in all this technology of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this modern day projection that's largely been going on for the last to me anyway, 70, 80 years of projecting an image and a cultural ideology that suggests that we weren't greater than what we actually were. So that's what I mean. So to just render Booker T down to a handkerchief, what did he say? Whatever that term was.
A handkerchief head.
a handkerchief head and liken him to Al Sharpton. I'm like, do we really have to do this? What is wrong with people? And this is, like I said, this was somebody who held a judicial position. Okay, Judge Joe Brown. Hey, Judge, listen. Anytime, you're welcome. Come on over. We can have a conversation anytime. I'm gonna need you though. First, let me dig it up. You're gonna have to holler at all of this right here. Oh yeah, I posted it already. For anybody who can repost it, the Black Intelligentsia playlist. I'm gonna really need you to dig through all of that first before you literally insult our intelligence by suggesting to us that he started a college to teach people how to sweep floors. That is literally one of the most unintellectual things I've ever heard come out of your mouth, Judge Joe Brown, Your Honor. Egregious.
To add a step to that, just to show how ignorant that statement or those statements were. Just for a brief second, I'm going to read from the Booker T. Washington Institute that's in, I think, Sierra Leone. So they found it fitting to use this man's name, his name, to name their school after. Okay. And in unison with what his outlook on the world was, this is what they said. The institution was founded in 1929 with assistance from Americans and is named after an American educator, Booker T. Washington. It is located east of the capital, Monrovia, and is situated on 1,086 acres rural campus in Kakata, Margibi County, and has an enrollment of approximately 2,000 students for over 85 years of existence. So you have a school that's like a satellite school to Tuskegee this is Liberia, that's existed for 85 years. Tuskegee is, I think, 163 years, if I'm not mistaken, because it was 1881. So, almost 150 years. For over 85 years of existence, BWI has made enormous contributions to the human resource development of Liberia. The institution currently runs two programs, the regular vocational and technical program and the accelerated vocational training program. These programs offer courses in agriculture, automotive, electricity, electronics, building trade, carpentry, drafting, masonry, and plumbing, business, secretarial science, accounting, and domestic science. Our mission is to produce a new generation of ethical and entrepreneurial technocrats, managers, and leaders through participatory, hands-on approach to human resource development. We are now working in the direction of transitioning from a vocational institute to a full-fledged technical college. Does that sound like somebody that's trying to teach people how to sweep and mop? No. It is a complete mischaracterization of Booker T's philosophy his work, his sacrifices. There were many times where racist whites threatened to burn down Tuskegee. Booker T had to walk a fine line to make sure he didn't lose his life, but the students at the school didn't lose theirs as well. He had to take a lot of crap from white people. Okay? Because you best believe, if they came there to string him up, you best believe most of those students, they probably weren't going to survive either. People from other countries naming schools after him because of some of the things that he had going on in Africa, like the cotton growing enterprise that he was working on in concert with the German government in Togo in Africa, that could have been utilized to actually offset the power of the racist whites in the South. If there could have been another source of cotton grown in the world that people could have partook of. See, that's strategy. That's strategy. He fought with economics. He didn't have to be all up in white people's faces to get something done for us, to create a space for us too. You got to be aware of who went before you, and not let people tell you who your leaders are. And you need to look at the history itself and recognize who truly were the leaders. Don't let people tell you who your leaders are.
Don't go off of anecdotes like, well, my mammy and my pappy told me. I get tired of hearing that shit.
Okay. So we'll continue. It's sickening to know there have been multitudes of black males specifically who have made it their life's mission to undermine and diminish business development amongst black men. The sad thing is, black men are judged more for what they haven't accomplished than by what they have accomplished. It makes no sense for men to diminish achievements of other men, and it should not be done from black intellectuals who haven't built anything for black people, while simultaneously demonizing attempts by these very people who demonstrated black excellence. Whites are not demonized for the businesses they opened that failed by their group. It is not an indictment on their character nor their identity. The lack of support has contributed more to the failures of black business development, more so than incompetence. I say all the time, black men did not turn their back on black America. Black America turned its back on black men who are more than capable of building an infrastructure for the advancement of black people. The irony is, those who have been unwilling to support black business development are the same ones who attack these people, which makes no sense, when these critics have not developed anything for African Americans. Woodson goes on to say, now, the highly educated Negroes who have studied, now this is a PhD once again, so again, y'all can't forget that Carter G. Woodson is a PhD. He's the father
from Harvard.
He's the father of Negro History Month, which he wanted to use, well, Negro History Week that became Negro History Month. He wanted to set this up because he felt that black people were losing their connection to the great people who went before them, like your Washingtons and other people of sort, you know what I'm saying, who contributed to black development. Your scientists, your inventors, your business people, people like that. Now, the highly educated Negroes who have studied economics at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Chicago will say that the Negro cannot succeed in business because their professors who have never had a moment's experience in this sphere have written accordingly. The whites, they say, have the control of the natural resources and so monopolize the production of raw materials as to eliminate the competition of the Negro. Apparently, this is true. All things being equal from the point of view of the oppressor, he sees that the Negro cannot meet the test. So he's saying right here that these people are viewing black men as being incapable. So in lies your talented 10th theory, because
Bingo.
only 10% are capable.
Only 10%.
You know what I'm saying? Who ironically are picked by the very same white people to
Isn't that
lord
something?
over black people. This is very interesting. Okay,
Isn't that something?
so the impatient, highly educated Negroes, therefore, say that since under the present system of capitalism, the Negro has no chance to toil upward in the economic sphere. The only hope for bettering his condition in this respect is through socialism, the overthrow of the present economic regime, and the inauguration of popular control of resources and agencies which are now being operated for personal gain. This thought is gaining ground among Negroes in this country, and it is rapidly sweeping them into the ranks of what are commonly known as communism. Now,
Uh-oh.
so now we got now everything been saying about black people shifting to Marxism and all that is true.
Wait a minute. Don't we have current day legislation today that they're trying to pass in all these various cities and stuff talking about how shoplifting and social disruption should not be criminalized? We are also changing the term of the word criminal to, what is it? Uh, it's called something affected person. I forgot what it's called. They have a new term that they're parading around now, right? Um, and you see all of this in policy today. You literally are seeing it today. It's all manifesting. This is the reason why the message that we espouse, Booker T was just like, well, in 100 years, you guys will see. You'll see.
Okay, so you're seeing the infantilization of adults. Okay, so because number one, okay, so how can I say this? Black people have demonstrated in the worst of times that black people can build institutions like anybody else.
hmm
To the point that people actually mimic black people's behavior in doing so. Globally, black people came to institutions like Tuskegee to learn from us. Mind you, we just some old, poor, lowly slaves.
We
We
just some
don't know
old
nothing,
pole dunk.
right? But for some reason, the Japanese learned from ex-slave in Booker T. Washington.
Let me
And
go. Let me go across
oh,
the ocean to go learn from some podunk Negroes, Ryle.
oh, George Washington Carver too. He was in slavery. Okay. Chinese, Japanese.
All the places you can go, right?
Now, answer me this, Complex. Hold on, answer me this.
Go ahead.
What three Asian countries in the past 100 years have truly elevated their technological expertise?
It's gonna be China, Taiwan, and Japan.
Taiwan, hold on, India too.
I'm sorry. Not Japan. India.
Taiwan? No, India,
India, Taiwan, and China. I got
Taiwan,
it wrong. I got it
and,
wrong because I was
and
thinking Japan in there
Japan,
because
Japan,
he had Japanese students there, but I was
Japan too.
yeah, yeah.
Could it be that the information that the Chinese and the Japanese and the Indians learned from Tuskegee was taken back and over the course of decades used to build up the internal capabilities of these countries?
If I were to compare that to your modern day H-1B program, I would have to argue yes.
Absolutely. What are we talking about here? Sweet floors? Bro, please. Let me continue.
You came all the way over here, Ryle, from China, because your floor sweeping technique. I'm sorry. Go ahead, dude. Oh shit.
Woodson
Hey,
really,
real quick. Hey, can we put 15 more on it, man? We're gonna come up with 2.5.
yeah,
I
I'm almost,
do got.
I'm almost.
I got to handle business. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Woodson really gets to the heart of why there is so much turmoil in Black America. This fight between intellectual blacks and the black business class has been a fight between capitalists and communists. While the capitalists were about using the economic system to advance African Americans and communists, whose main goal is to overthrow the economic order. We wonder why there has been no synergy between blacks from an economic perspective. There are those blacks, the few, who support capitalism and how it can build up their families and communities. And there are those who want to destroy this type of system. Woodson mocks these academics who present whites as a boogeyman that keeps us from being competitive. This mindset does not line up with the achievement of Black business development. The inventions Blacks created that made life better, not just for Blacks, but Americans overall. We need to understand how this is the real split that took place in America amongst Blacks. Not the split from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, which came to a head in the 1930s, but the split from capitalist principles to communist oriented principles. Woodson goes further with this. There can be no objection to this radical change if it brings with it some unselfish genius to do the task better than it is now being done under the present regime of competition. Russia so far has failed to do well this particular thing under a proletarian dictatorship in an agricultural country. But whether this millennium comes or not, the capitalistic system is so strongly entrenched at present that the radicals must struggle many years to overthrow it. And if the Negro has to wait until that time to try to improve his condition, he will be starved out so soon that he will not be here to tell the story. The Negro, therefore, like all other oppressed people, must learn to do the so called impossible.
Oh,
Woodson critiques the idea of Black people who were seduced by the Marxist ideology, the same ideology that had not defeated America's capitalistic model, for aligning themselves with the enemy of America. We know that ultimately the Soviet Union was broken up by the capitalistic model that the US employed. Woodson is noting that Black Americans will waste a lot of time aligning themselves with a foreign powers ideology who have not even shown themselves competent to address their own internal affairs using communism as a viable solution for its own people. Woodson continues. The uneducated Negro businessman, however, is actually at work doing the very thing which the miseducated Negro has been taught to believe cannot be done. This much handicapped Negro businessman could do better if he had some assistance, but our schools are turning out men who do as much to impede the progress of the Negro in business as they do to help. The trouble is that they do not think for themselves. Woodson's remarks time and time again bring us back to the reality that the Black business class was the class answering the economic challenges of Black America, not the intellectuals. His comments concerning the Black intelligentsia being an impediment to Black business development demonstrates a full-fledged betrayal of contributions of these great Blacks who took pride in who they were and the work they performed for their families and Blacks overall. The idea that classes of Blacks who had doctorate degrees couldn't think for themselves demonstrates to us how Black people have had incompetent leadership at the helm for the past 100 years, which is why Blacks are not going anywhere in a positive way. You further go. If the highly educated Negro would forget most of the untried theories taught him in school, if he could see through the propaganda which has been instilled into his mind under the pretext of education. So listen, he's
Uh-oh.
saying this is a pretext of education. It is not education. If he would fall in love with his own people and begin to sacrifice for their uplift, if the highly educated Negro would do these things, he could solve some of the problems now confronting the race. During recent years, we have heard much of education and business administration, administration departments and Negro colleges, but if they be judged by the products turned out by these departments, they are not worth a continental, which was the money of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
The teachers in this field are not prepared to do the work, and the trustees of our institutions are spending their time with trifles instead of addressing themselves to the study of a situation which threatens the Negro with economic extermination.
Wow.
Woodson's reference to education being propaganda rightly indicts the educational system. The Black intelligentsia finds themselves defending to the detriment of their group. When we see many Black intellectuals in their criticisms of the system, they constantly push for more education. However, what is more education? Or they say better education. What is better education? This is the same education they received, which culminated in their present credentials. So either the education is good, or you need more of it, or it's not worth anything. But this makes no sense because you shouldn't have to defend an education that works. It should be self evident it works.
Yep.
There have been billions and billions of dollars given to public education to educate Black children. What are the results? Abysmal. Woodson points out this same education is what Black academics have been seduced by, while simultaneously asking for solutions they've been propagandized to be against. In other words, their presence is futile. It relates to their in present. In other words, their presence is futile as it relates to solving issues related to Black African Americans.
Hmm.
Woodson posits the idea that one of the reasons Black intellectuals can't solve problems for Blacks is because they don't really love them.
Ouch.
We can leave it there. Now, we see Cornel West, oh, I'm running for president. I'm running for Black people because I love my Black brothers and my brown brothers and sisters, and I'm doing this. But when he kicked off his campaign, and we're going to get to this later when we delve into Dyson in his book about Cosby and his book that he wrote on Jay-Z, which is a very fascinating dichotomy of how we see Dyson as an intellectual, how he views somebody like Cosby who came from projects just like Jay-Z, and how he views Cosby as opposed to how he views Jay-Z. He views Cosby as a sellout while he views Jay-Z as a ghetto messiah.
Hmm.
But many of these prognosticators come out here claiming that their interest is in Black people because they love them. Okay, well, when Cornel West started his campaign, and this is not against anybody that's in prison unfairly and all of that type of stuff. I'm with getting those types of people released. But when he started his campaign, he didn't start his campaign trying to have a conversation with Robert F. Smith and how we could bring about economic changes to Black people's position. He started his campaign saying he wants to speak for the brothers and sisters that's incarcerated unfairly. Now, to be honest, I think that's a crock of shit, number one. And the reason why I'm saying that is not because I have anything against those who are jailed unfairly. No, like I said, they should be got out because they're in there unfairly. But how are you going to work with people that's in jail, bro? In prison, presidentially? Why ain't you trying to meet with people that's free, bro? People that can actually bring some change. Why is you meeting with Black scientists and Black business people and people who are inventing things and stuff like that? Okay? Where is Black people's version of Shark Tank? Where that used to be something that used to be a part of the fabric of our culture. We had schools that literally were incubation centers for young Black boys to develop their minds in a creative way. Many little laboratories in the mold of Tuskegee to get them to think in a way that we're always talking about in this space. Like men need to get into trades. You know how we know we failed? We know we failed because we have to keep pushing the idea when it was already set up to be pushed in a direction of trades in the first place. But a lot of Black people turned against Booker T. Washington, saying he wanted to be an accommodationist. Now, for all these years later, only to find themselves right back looking at Booker T. Washington in the face like, damn, maybe he might have been right.
Right.
When he already had us moving in that direction. Go ahead.
No, I'm just rocking what you're saying, man. Because I mean, I think this is a good way to close this one out. Because, man, yeah, it's been a lot of wild stuff being said. I'm like, wow, this ain't it.
We need more Black men in STEM. We need more Black men in tech. We need more Black men in trade. But for the past 100 years, you pushed back against it. And I'm saying this right here and right now. This ain't got nothing to do with Black females. This has everything to do with Black people choosing feckless and ineffective leadership for the past 100+ years.
That's
I'm not just
literally
blaming.
what it is.
I'm not just blaming the leadership. I'm blaming the people who follow that leadership too.
And sign and co-sign the bullshit, subscribe to it against their better judgment, better intellect.
Now,
Go along to get along ass.
what we need to see is something that took place between Complex and Green Gorilla last year. What we need to see is a melding of the intellectual capabilities, because we all got intellectual capabilities, but people of his magnitude, what we need to see is people of his magnitude melding with the business class. That's why they did the show on micromobility. We got a lot of respect for him doing that with Complex, because that's what it's supposed to be.
And salute to Green Gorilla for that, man.
That's where we need to be. We need to see the melding of that. Not the intellect against the productivity. There needs to be a melding in that.
Yeah.
Because in the melding of that, we can all come up with even more ideas. Because now we got thinkers of different calibers in the same space thinking together.
And shout out to Dr. Dunbar too. I collab with 2 PhDs in the space about that.
So we're not against PhDs. What we're against is spaces misusing the talents of people who go get higher level degrees for entertainment purposes. We want to get money. We want to see Gigi get money too for his work. We don't want to see that talent be misused or anybody else's. That's what we're here to do. But we're going to have to own the failures that we made in the past. Can't blame white folks all the time. Can't say it's Black female. At a certain point, we're going to have to look at it and say, you know what? You know, some of those things I like about Du Bois, but this right here between him and Booker T. Washington, I just can't co-sign with him on. I just can't do it because it don't make any sense. It doesn't make sense for the time. When you look at what we were facing, we basically was a people that needed a home in terms of an internal infrastructure. These were the people that set the foundation of building that infrastructure. And their strategy in terms of procuring resources to build that should be honored, not denigrated, because you're looking at it from a modern perspective, like, I want to let these white folks talk to me any kind of way. You would have sat there and took it, because if you didn't take it, you could have got strung up and they would have came and did all types of stuff to your family, and you didn't want that. So you would have had to grin and bear it just like he did. not because he was a punk, but because it was for survival purposes. You can't speak about those experiences from a modern day sensibility, because you can be in marches outside where you can scream in a police face because the environment is different. It's the same police. It's just that politically it's not really tenable for police to do what they have done in the past. So you can get away with it, but make no mistake about it. Those college students on campus, they found out the hard way that, okay, when these folks want to turn it around, they'll turn it around on your ass.
Yep.
They'll turn it around on your ass.
And let me just do this real quick here, but just before we drop off, just a little friendly reminder here of who it is that we're talking about. Bootlicker, handkerchief boy, or whatever you call it. Literally, by no means. By no means. Okay? This ain't him. Right? This ain't him, right? Again, first time a black person met publicly at the president on equal. See, I need y'all to really soak this one up. Equal terms. With the president of the United States. Equal terms. Right? That doesn't imply that he was lesser than. You guys understand basic math, right? Greater than, less than, equal to. Okay? And the primary leader in the African community and of the black contemporary elite, Jesus. We got to stop the lies, y'all. We got to stop the lies.
Elite back then meant grassroots people. Elite back then did not mean, when we say elite, we're talking about these people. We're talking about Garvey. We're talking about Philip Payton, Afro-American Realty Company that opened up Harlem, that really led to the Harlem Renaissance being possible. It was businessmen that opened up Harlem for black people. So that one time Harlem could not be inhabited by black people. They wasn't allowed. And through some luck, they were able to get a foothold in there. And once they got a foothold in there, they were able to develop it and open it up to black people, which is where you got a lot of the cultural vibrancy that you got from the Harlem Renaissance in there. So again, your business class again, creating environments where cultural dynamism could take place. Okay, I mean, you had all types of people coming through the Harlem Renaissance. Your Langston Hughes, your Jordan Hurstons, and your Paul Robesons, and people of this ilk. So again, you got to keep these things in mind. Your jazz as well. So again, you can't dismiss your black business class. That is idiotic. There's no other group of people out here that dismiss their business class and their contribution.
But black people.
Like black people do. This is something you've been trained to do, though. You have been trained to be against your black business class. You have been trained to think that you can't do business because you have been trained not to work together. When you hear somebody say black people can't work together, that means that the propaganda has worked. Because when you look at your history, it's anything but that.
But that.
It's anything but black people
it's
not.
like, I don't hear, yo. You must be one of these new cats, because that wasn't how it worked in the old world. Hey,
When
look,
we,
man,
hold on, let me say this last part.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what the history shows is that Jim Crow showed that black people did not need politics the way black people think they do now. It forced, not it forced. Black people already had a spirit of working together. When people say, oh, segregation is the only reason why black people work together, that's bullshit. That's a lie. That is an
Black people
absolute
worked
lie.
together before there was such thing as a segregation.
Right.
Come on, dude. Oh
That's
my
a
God.
lie, y'all.
Simple
Okay.
logic.
I got, and later on in this presentation, I'm going to present evidence showing Black people creating businesses in slavery and passing down generational wealth in slavery too. It was an ethos that it was a burgeoning ethos that existed, that once Black people got emancipation, this is why your Booker T. Washingtons were possible, because the ethos was there already. They just didn't have the freedom to really fully maximize it. But once they got free, look at how many institutions that they built
Popped up.
coming out of emancipation. Black towns, Black banks, hospitals. You can't sit here and say that, this didn't exist when Black people was getting property while they was enslaved. You can't say that. Segregation is not why Black people work together, because when you say that, you're saying by definition Black people are defective and don't know how to do things that like normal people do. That's not true. Black people have failed for the propaganda, specifically the propaganda echoed by the people that they thought were operating on their behalf, which was a lot of these intellectuals who go out here. You don't see no Black drug dealer trying to follow Michael Eric Dyson for a reason. I'm not saying selling drugs is good. I'm just saying the drug dealer is a capitalist, though. He has a product and he's selling that. He's not trying to hear that kumbaya stuff. That's not gonna work.
Especially when he's selling it in his own community.
Right. He's not trying to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Now, what we need to get is that type of man or woman to think about selling something that is less poisonous and less, not harmful to his own group. But the mindset is the right mindset to engage in commercial activity. They're just selling the wrong thing. So y'all have to really, really understand that this is propaganda. Black people not working together is propaganda. This is the reason why we're doing this, because what we want to bring to this space is something that dispels that notion and keeps us from working together. That's the purpose of this. This ain't about beefing with people. This is about dispelling myths and notions that are counterproductive in terms of allowing us to come together and work. Because especially when we take things offline and we talk amongst men, we can get things done. We've done it before. We all got to pull back our ego to a certain extent if we want to get shit done. Or we're going to be arguing with each other for the next 100 years, or y'all going to be arguing because I ain't going to be doing that shit. I'm going to be out.
I'm about to say, that's that.
I'm going to be out. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to find other things. You know what I'm saying? And it's going to be another 100 years of the same BS. I'm not interested in that. And I'm hoping that a lot of these other cats ain't interested in this stuff too. We all got something to bring to the table. We ain't dummies. We're not a group of dumb men. We might be on some dumb shit sometimes, but we ain't dumb. We got to push the dumb shit to the side and think about what's best for us presently, because we trying to eat now too, but for the future too. Because a lot of these young dudes are looking for a plan. They're not looking for beefing. They're looking for some type of plan and strategy to press things forward, because I know myself, I'm tired of the back and forth. I'm tired of the panels, the niggas arguing. I'm tired of it too. That's why I don't even engage in it no more, because I'm like, look, that's a waste of energy. I'm about getting stuff done, and I want to see Black men prosper. Black men who want to prosper, I want to see them prosper, and let's get it done. It's really that simple. That's all it is.
Well, I think I got out what I had to get out, man. And you know what I'm talking about. I think really, man, the statement really kind of set me off when I heard that a few days ago. So, I'm like this, man. We didn't, for this we didn't drop the link or anything like that, but we're always down to drop the link. So Judge Joe Brown, if maybe, I don't know, maybe we're getting it messed up. That playlist, the link in that chat is there. And so I would say this: if you really do think that, comb through all of that first, and then come talk to us, because I think that was a gross mischaracterization, and it really didn't put you in a good light. Right? I'm supposed to hold you of high esteem, but you're telling me about what somebody told you about somebody else, and you didn't even bother to bare minimum do what we bothered to do, was actually do our own research about the person. So I'm just saying, we got to call this to the carpet. Dana, just maybe be a little more on task with it next time. Or maybe you didn't know either. I don't know. Right. But this is just something that stood out to us, me specifically, and I felt as though it needed to be addressed. So with that being said, we're gonna close this one out. Please hit the like button, share this. If you guys mess around the Twitter space and all that, you see this throw this their way. Maybe that can funnel into the conversation or something, right? But yeah, we'd be interested to know everyone's take and their thoughts on this. With that being said, we're gonna go ahead and chunk deuces, man. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all next one. Peace out.
Peace.